I need to speak with your father regarding an incident involving a mugging. Is he home right now? Yes, he's here. Would you like to talk to him? For a moment, the officer seemed confused by my tone but eventually responded, yes, please let me see him. I led the officer inside and opened the door. My father is here, I told him. The officer appeared surprised to see my father standing there. This event took place a few months ago, I added. I'm James, a university student. Lately, I've been considering a job with a large company, but there's one thing I'm still unsure about, whether or not to take over my father's company. You see, he's the president of a small factory. When I was younger, I dreamed of running the factory and taking his place as president. But as I went through my rebellious years, those feelings faded. I started to feel embarrassed by my father, always covered in oil stains from his work. Even now, as an adult, there's still a part of me that feels that way. However, after working part-time jobs, I've developed a deep respect for him. He's always worked tirelessly, supporting many employees and their families. But still, the image of a salaryman in a suit working hard seems somehow more appealing than my father's humble factory life. One day, while shopping with him, we were suddenly called out from behind. James. Both my father and I turned around to see a man about his age, Jack. Long time, no see. Jack greeted us. It turned out Jack was a former high school classmate of my father, now in a suit representing a well-known corporation. After mentioning his successful career, he asked my father, "Did you end up taking over the family business?" My father responded, "Well, yes, we're still getting by." Jack sneered. "A factory like yours. You've really done something, haven't you, as president? And you're just a high school graduate. That's impossible." How pathetic. I was taken aback by Jack's words. I knew my father had taken over the factory after high school, but I never expected a former classmate to mock him like that. Jack continued to smile smugly at my father. "No, I didn't manage to make the factory bigger. Despite my dreams of expanding it when I was younger, I just didn't have the business sense. So, that dream never came true. I guess you could laugh about it. I'm good with my hands, but not with business. Still, at least we didn't go bankrupt." Jack found this amusing, laughing heartily and giving my father a playful slap on the shoulder. "You're good with your hands, but not with your head, huh? But hey, at least you didn't go bankrupt. I honestly thought guys like you would have gone under by now," he chuckled. After some more back and forth, Jack mentioned he had to get back to work and suggested catching up at the next reunion before he left. My father looked awkward after the encounter. Turning to me, he said, "Shall we continue?" We resumed our shopping, but as we walked, I couldn't shake the feeling that my father's work was being mocked, and I didn't speak up to defend him. In my mind, the scale of my father's factory and his role as president seemed less impressive compared to the allure of a corporate job. A few weeks later, by chance, my father's alumni association held a gathering at the bar where I worked part-time. The bar was packed, and I had little chance to serve the table where my father's classmates were. Initially, I considered it lucky, but when I eventually had to go to that table, I felt embarrassed to serve drinks to my father's old classmates. Even though I felt uncomfortable, I said nothing, as it was my job. The bar had private rooms, and when I entered the room where my father's alumni association was, my father, who happened to be near the door, smiled and greeted me. "James. Are you the son?" he asked the woman sitting next to him, who introduced me as his son. I politely greeted everyone and served drinks, all the while trying to maintain the serious and steady demeanor my father always displayed. His former classmates teased me as I served, and I awkwardly laughed along. Jack, sitting nearby, noticed and spoke up. "We met not too long ago, didn't we, James? Are you still thinking about taking over your father's factory?" I responded honestly, "No, I'm still considering it." Jack, clearly drunk, loudly declared, "Forget it. Your father's business is nothing to brag about. You should work for a company like mine, not waste your time with that place." He then began boasting about his career, but something didn't add up. He'd previously told me he was in sales, but now he claimed to be in accounting. I kept quiet, sensing that it could cause trouble to bring it up. But my father, in his drunken state, spoke up, asking, "Has your department changed recently? You were in sales the last time we met, right? Was there an urgent transfer? Did sales not work out for you?" Jack looked flustered and admitted, "Yeah, I switched departments. Sales wasn't for me. I moved to accounting." My father, in a calm voice, pointed out that Jack's company had recently been acquired by a foreign corporation, and its accounting department had since been outsourced overseas. This information drew laughter from the group. Jack, embarrassed and regretful, muttered, "I think I'll head home," and left the room in defeat. The others around us reassured my father that Jack's behavior was nothing new and that he'd always been like that. I felt proud to see my father's honesty praised rather than ridiculed. Even though he was drunk, he had managed to handle a situation that others had found awkward. Half a year has passed since then, and I still find myself grappling with the decision about taking over my father's company. Every day, I feel more unsure about what to do. One day, while relaxing at home, the doorbell rang. Since my mother wasn't around, I went to answer it. "Yes, may I help you?" I asked. The officer at the door looked surprised and asked, "Are you James?" I answered, "Yes." He explained there was an incident involving a purse snatching and that they needed to ask my father some questions. "Purse snatching? My father?" I asked, bewildered. "Yes. Your father is suspected of being involved in a purse snatching." "Is he home?" the officer inquired. "Yes, he's here. Would you like to speak with him?" I invited the officer inside, who seemed taken aback for a moment by my tone. After a brief pause, he responded, "I'd like to speak with him." I led the officer into the room, where I told him, "My father is here." The room contained a Buddhist altar along with a photo of my father, and I explained to the officer that my father had tragically passed away in a traffic accident. The officer was left speechless for a moment, clearly shaken by the news. He muttered an apology. "I'm so sorry for your loss." I asked him who had accused my father of purse snatching, but he said he couldn't share that information with me, as it was confidential. After a few more apologies, the officer left. A few days later, while I was working at my father's factory, trying to fill the gap left by his absence, Jack burst in. "Take me to your father," he shouted, his voice overpowering the hum of the factory machinery. "Return what he stole." The workers, startled by the loud intrusion, stopped what they were doing. I was just as shocked as they were. I approached Jack and said, "My father isn't here." Jack refused to back down. "Then call him out here. He took something from me." One of the employees whispered, "Purse snatching? Is he talking about our president?" But Jack wasn't budging. He crossed his arms and continued to demand, "Where is he?" I calmly responded, "My father wouldn't have snatched a purse. Are you sure you're not mistaken?" Jack insisted, "No, it was definitely your father. He must have been jealous of me working for a big company, so he grabbed my bag. Luckily, I didn't have my wallet on me, but it's still unforgivable that he took anything at all. The police were no help, so I'm here to confront him directly." I asked him when this supposedly happened, and Jack confidently replied, "About 2 weeks ago." The workers around us seemed confused, whispering among themselves. I pressed him further, and his temper flared. "Why do you keep asking me? I said 2 weeks ago. I came all the way to this smelly factory just for this. Let me talk to your father." I could feel my chest tighten with anger. Not only was Jack insulting my father's factory and workers, but he was accusing a man who'd been gone for a month of something he clearly didn't do. I told Jack, "My father died a month ago in a car accident. How could he possibly have stolen from you? Maybe there was no purse snatching at all." Jack looked stunned. "Huh," he muttered, clearly taken aback. I continued, "How could my father snatch a purse when he's been dead for a month? Maybe there's no truth to your story at all." I knew Jack was lying. At the recent reunion, I'd learned he had always been a liar, even back in school. It also turned out Jack had been envious of my father since their youth because the girl he liked had chosen my father over him. His jealousy had festered for years, and now it was making him try to ruin my father's name. I couldn't forgive Jack for making such a false accusation against my father, especially after he had passed away. As Jack continued to shout, someone from the factory floor shouted back, "Our president wouldn't do something like that. He's a serious man who always thinks about the staff." Sure, we're always short-staffed, but that's because he teaches us his skills and encourages independence. He was someone who cared about the workers, not the profits. More voices joined in, praising my father's character. and I felt a lump in my throat. I realized how wrong I had been to be embarrassed by my father's work. He was a man who had earned the respect and love of his employees, and even in death, they were still standing up for him. Jack's face turned red with embarrassment as the workers spoke out in defense of my father. I gave him the final blow. You're trying to frame my father with lies. I'll report this to the police. Furious, Jack stormed out of the factory, and I followed through on my promise. I reported the false accusation to the police, and thanks to a recording of the incident made by one of the employees, the police were able to act quickly. Jack's lie ended up being his own downfall, and he was arrested and put behind bars for a while. It was a relief to see him face the consequences of his actions. A few days later, a woman claiming to be Jack's wife came to our house, bringing a gift box as an apology. She confirmed that Jack had framed my father because he had been fired from his job and couldn't find another. Obsessed with maintaining his elite status, he had lied about his career, and when he got drunk, his lies became inconsistent and exposed. His resentment toward my father had built up over the years, and that's when he decided to make false accusations. I felt disgusted by his petty motives, and Jack's wife revealed that she planned to divorce him. Jack had no children, so even if he got out of jail, no one would be waiting for him. After I graduated from college, I decided to take over my father's company. The passing of my father left the business in uncertain hands, and I felt a responsibility to ensure its future. More than that, though, I couldn't forget the voices of the factory workers who had defended my father when Jack had tried to bring him down. I wanted to be the kind of president my father had been, a leader who was loved and respected by his employees. That moment became a turning point in my life. Now studying business administration, I could handle the managerial aspects that my father had struggled with, but I also knew I needed to learn from the workers about the technical skills my father had passed down. They were more than willing to teach me, sharing stories about my father's work ethic and leadership. Each lesson helped me understand just how great my father had been. As I worked, covered in oil stains like my father before me, I spoke to his portrait. I used to be embarrassed by this dirt, but now I see it as proof of the hard work you put in every day. I'll do my best to follow in your footsteps and make your dream of expanding the factory a reality. I felt as though my father was smiling down on me. I had made up my mind. I was going to work hard and become the kind of president he had always dreamed of, a leader who would build upon his legacy. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video. Stay stunned.